Oh, figures it goes live mid-sip. Hey, it's Jason Martinez. It is time for BetParks Presents Stick to Hockey Live, Thursday edition, episode 42. Anthony DiMarco from thefourthperiod.com going to join us in just a minute. And we got a ton to discuss because we're on the eve of the final day of the 2020, 21-22 Flyers season at least. Playoffs will be coming up next week. But let me tell you about BetParks because the all-new BetParks Casino and Sportsbook app, it is now live. It is fantastic. Take it from me. The new BetParks app is everything that you have wanted in a mobile casino and a sportsbook. The other app was really good, but this one has taken all the considerations of being great and changed, and ease of use, easy to sign up, easy to deposit, easy to use, easy to navigate, easy to understand, fun to use, and faster to win than ever before. So if that's not enough for you, how about maybe this will be? Right now, all BetParks users, all new and existing, just use the promo code JASON750, JASON 750, and you're going to get a risk-free bet up to $750. 750 bones. Terms and conditions apply again. That's for new and existing users. So make sure you download the brand new BetParks app. Check out the same-game parlays, live in-game betting, player performances, spreads, props, you name it. It's all there for you. Everything from the hockey playoffs, which are upcoming, hoops playoffs, which are ongoing, Major League Baseball, golf, tennis, F1, you name it. It's all there for you. So check it out. Again, use promo code JASON750 and get that risk-free bet up to $750 and download the new All BetParks app today. And you do need to be over 21 and present in Pennsylvania or New Jersey. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, let's get to episode 42 of BetParks Presents Stick to Hockey Live. He joins us right now north of the border. It is Anthony DiMarco from thefourthperiod.com on Stick to Hockey Live. What's going on, Ant?
Not much, buddy. Looking forward to ending this regular season. You know, with the way that the playoffs have kind of been set, especially in the Eastern Conference, although, you know, you look in the West, it kind of went down to the wire, but not all that much with Vegas and Dallas. It's felt like a lot of inconsequential games for quite some time now, and I'm looking forward to some meaningful hockey across the league.
Yeah, it's going to be incredible. We're going to talk about that. I got to light a candle because at the end of the season, you got to light a candle like you're going to church.
Yep.
Season to bed. You need a little aromatherapy. This is mulled cider. It's a bit of a fall scent, not quite spring. So we're going to put that over here. And since we need a little energy this late in the season, I got to break out my little painting tool here. Right? Got to open up the 5-hour energy. We got to get a little buzz going here.
Damn, you came prepared.
Get up on my skates a bit. You know, lacking energy. I was supposed to play this weekend and an autism awareness event, but the Flyers have breakup day on Saturday. And not only that, but I jacked up my back getting a kayak down for my wife the other day.
Oh my God. She really putting you to work, eh?
Oh, always, dude. Always.
That's a good day.
I'm getting this big kayak off this rack in my garage and I wrenched my back. And I mean, dude, don't get old. It sucks. I fuck up my back every 4 to 6 weeks.
Dude, the back is the one thing you can't run away from, eh?
No.
It always comes to get you.
Yeah. I got one of those. I never had them before, but I got one of those. I went to the drugstore today to get one of those cold hot things and stick it on my back. It feels pretty good, though.
A535, is that it?
This is, I don't know, no mess medicated patch, menthol 5%, cold therapy to reduce the pain, and hot therapy to ease away the pain. So
maybe just email me that. I'm not going to remember that shit.
Yeah, it's tough, man. We were on the ice the other night, too, for my son's U16 team. That's beginning already. It's bananas. But let's get to the business because the season's going to end tomorrow. Ottawa's coming to town. I think we talked about this last week. I think it was easy for the Flyers to get up for the Penguins game to kind of try and shit on their seeding, and it's a rival. But you knew that after that game, they played a really good game against the Pens. But you knew after that game, Chicago, they suck. You go to Winnipeg, they don't suck, but they're not going to make the playoffs. And then you're going to finish with Ottawa. It's hard to get up for those games when you're playing out the string, and you've been playing out the string since pretty much January.
Well, that's just it. You know, you're trying to get up for games that really mean nothing against teams that aren't really your big rivals per se. And, Exactly. And I was at the game in Montreal last week, and it was an entertaining-ish game. I found that Carey Price did not play well at all, but the Flyers played all right in that game. And, you're obviously looking for some young guys to make a name for themselves. Cates and Tippett and Brink, they've been up for quite a while now. I've really liked what I've seen from Ronnie Attard in particular. He's really straightened his game out. Igor Zamula is fit right in, playing on the right side as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have a guy like probably Hogberg, who needs some time in the AHL for sure.
He's probably not going to be an NHL player,
Yeah, I know. Like, obviously he's up right now just out of necessity, but he's the only one that I find has kind of stuck out like a sore thumb, has really kind of struggled up here. But again, like, you're playing with house money at this point, and obviously they're going to hand out the awards and such. But yeah, it's been tough, I'm sure, for these players to get up for each and every game aside from those divisional rivals like Pittsburgh.
Yeah. The games, they don't have teeth other than, the only meaning they have is, the amount of percentage chance you have when it comes to the NHL draft lottery, which at this point is right around the corner. I guess the draft lottery is going to happen at some point here before one of these first round games, right?
I believe it's actually May 10th. So
May 10th? Okay,
if I'm not mistaken, don't quote me on that, but I actually interviewed Mark Seidel, who runs his own central independent scouting bureau, and also works for the Barrie Colts, talking about the upcoming draft. And I believe he mentioned that the lottery is May 10th. If I'm not mistaken.
Okay, so that's a big night for the Flyers to obviously see, where they're going to end up in this draft order. And when I look at the percentages right now, I'm just going to bring up the most up-to-date ones. And these obviously could change, pending the results of a couple games this weekend, including the Flyers game and including Seattle, who's going to play the last game of the season. But right now, the Flyers have the fourth highest odds at 9.5%. But they're right there with Seattle. Seattle's got a 725 points percentage, and the Flyers have a 753. So for the worst record, you want to have a higher number here. But so we'll see how that plays out. But when you look at it, Ant, one of the things that I think is really interesting, and Chuck's going to speak, I believe, on Sunday and address the media. He's going to have breakup day on Saturday with the players, then Sunday. Go back to the 18-19 season when Dave Haxtell was fired and Scott Gordon was the interim. That season ended on April 8th, and Alain Vigneault was hired on April 15th, a calendar week from the final game of the season. Do you anticipate us getting a coach announcement that quickly?
I've been trying to dig on this for quite some time, a couple of weeks, let's say. And I spoke to a source actually earlier this morning, and he told me that they really haven't talked about that yet. Chuck has not wanted to go there yet, based on what I'm hearing. And, they have been kind of committed into giving Mike Yeo a run here for the stretch and not really trying to anything leak out. And I don't believe that internally they've gotten to that point yet of seriously considering anyone else. But what I do know is that they like how Mike Yeo has been with the younger talent. He's really set up a good rapport with them, and the proof is in the pudding, right? You look at what he's been able to do with guys like even an Owen Tippett, Bobby Brink, Noah Cates, Travis Sanheim, and Konechny have seemed rejuvenated under him. Even a guy like Morgan Frost, who a lot of people were criticizing Mike Yeo for his utilization of Frost earlier in the year. Now you see maybe all that hard work and tough love a bit paying off with a guy like Frost. I don't think Yeo is going to come back as a head coach, but I do think there's a strong possibility he comes back in a similar capacity that he was under Alain Vigneault. And as for a head coach, I haven't heard any possible names tied around, but on a speculative basis, for me, the guy that jumps out is Paul Maurice. I think he's kind of like the perfect guy for this team. I think he's a guy who can grow with a group of players, would help reinvent the identity of this team. But in terms of how quickly we'll get it, I'm not sure if it will be as fast as we saw Vigneault get hired, because I feel like Gordon was always kind of a lame duck coach as opposed to Mike Yeo, obviously a long-standing history with Fletcher going back to Minnesota. I think that maybe they're going to take some more time to do their due diligence and really get this coaching hire right, because it is important.
Yeah, the thing is with Gordon, though, the results and the play improved dramatically. They ended up falling short because they were just so far behind, but they got themselves, I think, back within 3 points at one time under Scott Gordon to get into that playoff mix, and then just ran out of gas. With Mike, it's a different situation, though, because the injuries that the team has dealt with Mike Yeo, and I mean, he's really been handed an impossible situation.
Terrible. Yeah.
And I agree with you. I think Mike's really good at communicating with young players, players feeling like he's in their corner, but being critical, and they always know where he stands. And I think he did a great job communicating through the media to the fan base, every element of trying to get this organization on track, and the way he was handling players like Frost. Like you said, a lot of people were critical of that. And I was as well. I know Bill Meltzer was. A lot of people going like, what are we doing with this guy? We're trying to make this guy Sean Couturier when that's not suited for his game. But it seems to be paying off now.
It has. And look, like Morgan Frost was like the one younger player who struggled under Mike Yeo. And I think it's because Mike Yeo was very adamant on him becoming a center. And so far, since I would say the last 20 games or so, he's looked good. Obviously, you want a bit more production, but on a team as offensively anemic as the Flyers can be at times, it's kind of, you're going to let that slide a bit with Morgan Frost. And he seemed to have gelled really well with Tippett and Noah Cates on his wings. And look, I'm in the similar boat. Like for me, like I still think that maybe Frost is better suited to be a winger long-term in the league. But if he's going to be a winger, I don't think he has a place on the Philadelphia Flyers. They're loaded at wing. Like you look at now and in the future between the right side with Brink and Tippett and Konechny and Atkinson, to say nothing of younger guys who aren't in the NHL like Allison and Tyson Forster. On the left side, you have Farabee, you have Noah Cates, Scott Lawton's more of a left wing, Oscar Lindblom. Like if he's going to have a long-term future with this team, assuming they don't trade one of these wingers in the summer, it has to be a centerman. And to be honest, it's worked out really well here with Morgan Frost under Mike Yeo. And maybe he knew something that we didn't. Maybe he knew things behind the scenes that we were not privy to. And, one person said to me with the Flyers that Yeo kind of has a similar vibe to John Stevens with the younger guys, a good communicator. But the other thing about John Stevens, and we've seen him since he's left Philadelphia, is that he's always been more of an assistant coach. He got that kick at the can with LA following the dismissal of Daryl Sutter, and he quickly lost that job. And I believe he's an assistant in Dallas under Rick Bowness. So, I mean, I think that Mike Yeo is more of an assistant coach because he is a good communicator and he brings a lot of, talent to, the defensive side of the puck and on the PK, certainly. And I think that if he's willing to come back in that capacity, it would be a win-win.
Yeah, I agree. And I've communicated with Mike over the last couple of weeks as well. And I know he loves it here and he'd love to stay. But again, you got to look at the situation. Who's the next head coach? Does he fit with that staff? Does that coach want him? So there's a lot of elements here to that equation. Further on Frost, I got wrapped up in this debate on Twitter. Somehow I got tagged in it and I had to comment. But this guy, moving Frost now, and we're going to have the debate between Anthony Sanfilippo and Bill Meltzer on Monday's episode. Moving Frost now is dangerous because he is a highly skilled player, but just hasn't figured it all out at the NHL level. And we've seen Justin Williams, we've seen Patrick Sharp, and this guy goes, well, I saw the skill with Patrick Sharp, and I don't see skill with Morgan Frost. And I'm like, you might want to get a new TV, Holmes, because if there's one thing that you can see with Morgan Frost is there's skill there. He just needs to put it together.
Yeah, like, look, I'm not as high on Morgan Frost as, let's say, Bill is, and, that doesn't make me right, but, like, the proof is in the pudding, and I've been evaluating a lot of these players since the trade deadline, and that's a 20-game sample size, and in that time, the three players with the highest expected goals for per 60, that is Cates, Frost, and Tippett in that order. And Frost's, expected goals against per 60 is 2.51, which is almost 0.5 less than his expected goals for per 60. He has a solid Corsi percentage, in the context of the Philadelphia Flyers top 5 in that regard. And like I said, you want the offensive production to come, but he is playing well at both sides of the ice. It's not like he's a liability in his own end. Now, do I think that Frost is going to be a 70-point type, top six centerman for the long haul? I'm not sure about that. And I still do worry about him being a top six player as a centerman long term. But I think he certainly has 50-point potential. And I certainly think he's already an NHLer at this point. The only problem with Frost retaining him is that if you keep him, you almost certainly think that he's going to be playing center, probably 3C next year. And then it begs the question, is Couturier, Hayes, and Frost a good enough 1-2-3 center punch down the middle to make the playoffs? We know they want to get back into the playoffs next year. So if you keep Frost, is it going to block you from adding another centerman, arguably a top six centerman that you desperately need? But then there's also the flip side of that coin that you presented, that are you going to sell low on a guy who has the potential to be a 50-point player in this league and get pennies on the dollars for what he's actually worth? So it really is a tricky situation with Frost for those reasons.
Yeah. That notion of they want to make the playoffs next year, do they? I mean, I know they said aggressive retool. I don't put any stock in that. It was said, in January? And I'll see that based on their actions. Yeah, they'd like to be in the playoff mix next year, but if they weren't, I don't think they'd be shattered. By the way, turn your mic around.
Turn my mic around?
Yeah, there you go. That's the side you want talking to.
A lot better.
And then see that little dial on the back? Move it one click. On the bottom on the back, move it one click there. Yep, you're perfect. Oh, yeah. Just to the upside down heart almost looking thing.
Like this?
Yep.
That's good.
Now you sound even better.
Amazing. I'm still not good with this mic business. That's why you're here.
Yeah, exactly. So they said aggressive retool. I think that's all just a bunch of words and hogwash. I think that what they've seen out of some of these young players could alter that timeline and alter their approach to next year, because you go, let's go into next year. If we're in the playoff mix, hey, bonus, we're in the playoff mix. If we're not, it's the quick recoil after next year in a very strong draft class, and we can address a lot of needs, get a little bit more cap, healthy, and move forward then. And I think if you communicate that to the fan base, and we'll see if Chuck Fletcher does coming up on Sunday, if you communicate that to the fan base, we're going to try and get better this offseason, but not just for next year, but for long term. And hey, if some reason you end up back in the lottery next year and you can somehow get Connor Bedard, then you're set for 15 years. I mean, this kid is outrageous, right?
Well, that would be the best course of action, is to run out a lineup similar to this one.
Yep.
Maybe unload a guy like Provorov for futures, accumulate as much draft capital as you can heading into next summer for the 2023 draft, and then really put your eyes on getting back into the mix in 23-24.
Yep.
I spoke to someone earlier today and brought that up specifically. What is this aggressive retool? And he kind of danced around it, because I do think that Chuck may address that publicly and give us a better idea on what they mean. And certainly you're right that actions speak louder than words, but he did reiterate that they do at this point want to get back into the playoffs. Now, I think that you and I both have a good sense that if it were up to the hockey ops department, that being Fletcher and Flair and Briere and all those guys, that they would probably take next year off, for lack of better terms.
Slow the roll a little bit.
Exactly. And then go in with no expectations, play with house money, really put your sights on the future. I think for them, the hockey ops, that is, it's about trying to sell that to their bosses, to say look, next year we may have some more empty buildings. We may have some more losses. We may not have the playoffs again. And you have to understand, the Fly, and I don't have to tell you this, they have not played a playoff game in the Wells Fargo Center since 2018.
Yeah.
That's tough.
The bubble was the only playoff they made.
Exactly. And that was no revenue for the owners playing in the bubble in terms of gate revenue. So, I mean, I could see how that's tough for ownership, but maybe if there's a philosophical change from higher than the hockey ops, maybe that will result in allowing the hockey ops department to do what I believe they know is probably the better course of action.
I would almost create an organizational flow chart to what a player like a generational player can do for an organization long term. I mean, not only what it does for an organization, the amount of influx of cash it would bring almost just to the city. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The economy around here. And you get a player like when Sidney Crosby was drafted in 05 to the Penguins, they were their front page news from the moment he was drafted to this very day. And they will be in Pittsburgh until he retires. That's what that kind of player can do. And that's what Bedard is. I mean, you look at the numbers he's putting up in the dub with Regina. I mean, it's ridiculous.
It's outrageous.
Over 100 points.
Yeah.
As a 16-year-old.
And when was the last time the Flyers had a player like that? Lindros?
Yeah.
Exactly. And, you know, even back when the Flyers were a very good team and making conference finals and cup finals under the Holmgren years, they never had that marketable superstar. Maybe year one of Pronger when he went to the Olympics and he was an assistant captain and he was still a dominant defenseman for that 1 year. But they were always kind of like a do it by committee type of group. Like you had like the Richards and the Carters and Briere and Gagne, kind of Hartnell, Lupul, sniff that as well, maybe a notch below. And it wasn't until Giroux kind of popped up that you had that marketable star. But even Giroux, how long was he kind of like floated as one of the faces of the league? A year or two?
Yeah.
I remember
Probably
TSN.
12, 13, and 14.
Exactly. Like I remember going into the 13 lockout shortened season, TSN had him ranked number 3. And after Laviolette called him, you know, the best player in the world. But I mean, he kind of had a cup of coffee in that elite mix. He was always kind of seen as that tier below with the likes of like Nick Backstrom and players like that.
Yeah.
But you have a good point that like the hockey ops knows, like, my God, like even from a business side, if you're able to inject a guy like Connor Bedard next year, hypothetically, and then let's say this year you would draft a guy like Savoie, like obviously not close to a generational talent, but still a very good player. Like, you know, in 23, 24, 25, like you could have some really marketable players on your hand, just looking at it from a business perspective. But how do you sell that to the business people who just want to see the bottom line get improved in the short term?
Yeah. That's the dynamic that's tough. I mean, you get a Connor Bedard, you're looking at, you've just acquired probably, you know, the second most talented athlete in the city. It'd be like Embiid and Bedard. You know what I mean? Like Embiid's not generational. Bedard is, and he potentially surpassed that. But I mean, I think that's what you're looking at. And, you know, I'm not a tank guy, but I go into next season and go, let's just slow down. And I'm not going to rebuild. I'm not doing this whole tear it down 5-year thing.
It's not necessary.
And they can't with the contracts they have on the books. But I am doing this strategically, kind of like the Kings did. And I'm going to draft well. And when I draft the top of the draft, I got to strike. And if there's a hockey trade in front of them this summer that involves, you know, a couple of players, and it's going to help them both now and long term, I'm interested. But I'm also putting the message out there from Chuck Fletcher that I'm not desperate.
Of course. And, you know, I spoke to Mark Seidel yesterday that I brought up just before, and he kind of gave a brief summarization of his view on the Flyers prospects. And he says he likes them. There's a lot of potential NHL talent there. Really sung the praises of Brent Flair, which I was happy to hear. Says that he really works hard, sees him in rinks across North America. But he did say that they lack that high-end superstar. He said they have a lot of guys who project to be solid middle six, even high-end skill type of guys. And he mentioned how like they've really put the onus, Flair and Fletcher, that is, on drafting guys with high-end skill outside of the top round. We've seen that with like Denvoyer and McLennan, players like that. But he said that there still is a need for that one player to really be the guy who projects to be like that top line, if not better type of talent.
Yeah.
And you can't really get that like via trade or free agency. They're not giving up those players. Like once in a blue moon, you have a Jack Eichel who gets moved, or you have a Ryan O'Reilly, but even he's not an elite player. And we've heard Fletcher reference it that the easiest way to get those guys is through the draft. He knows what's going on.
But it's got to be at the top of the draft.
It's got to be the top of the draft. And even this year, even if they somehow get the 3rd overall pick, like, are they going to get an elite talent? Even if they got Shane Wright, are they getting an elite talent?
He's a star player. He's not a superstar.
That's it. We were talking yesterday about him, and Seidel brought up that, like, up until January, when he really started to up his offensive game, there were worries that maybe he would slide, because although he's a dominant two-way player in the he's in the OHL right now, I believe. There was still some concerns like, oh, he's really not, dominating offensively in the OHL. How is that going to translate to the NHL? He seemed to have picked it up since then. But when you're drafting that high end or that high up in the draft, you're looking for that high end offensive skill.
Yeah, no doubt. You want a guy also that the other team is just going to, when he steps on the ice, is going to be like, holy shit, I got to deal with this guy, that can just break a game wide open at the one touch of the puck and boom, and can do something special. And they need that. Like, you have the second part of that, which is a really good player. Even though Couturier, I think Couturier is a really good player, but he doesn't scare an opposition like a game breaker. But he's the perfect guy kind of in that number 2 role.
Perfect.
Have the superstar and then a really, really good player that can be productive in all phases. And, there as well. Because I think you need both of those kind of players on a team to really contend. You need Kucherov and Stamkos, and then a great blue liner like Hedman. I don't know, you need that, but I mean, because Hedman's fantastic.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that team's just unreal. But still, you need to have those tiers of players. And if you're lacking that top tier, you can go out in free agency and get it if you have the money, but you overpay for it. Like, I think if you go out and pay Gaudreau $10 million, I don't know about that.
Well, look, I've always been trepidatious of handing out that kind of, money to wingers unless you are in the Kucherov Marner tier.
Yeah.
And I don't think that Johnny Gaudreau's in that tier. And, people call me crazy, but, like, is he even the best player on that line? No. With Elias Lindholm, Matthew Tkachuk, I know he racks up the most points and he's had an excellent year, but without Lindholm, who I think is the most underrated forward in the NHL, Agreed. Doing what he's doing, having a great year under Daryl Sutter, and Matthew Tkachuk just, I love Matthew Tkachuk. I just love
him so much space.
Yeah, and it allows him to do exactly what he's doing. And I don't think Gaudreau is a guy that if you could put him with, like, let's say you go into next year and you have Gaudreau on your top line with Couturier and Konechny, is Gaudreau getting 100 points?
Yeah, I don't know about that.
And that's the issue here. And look, like, Sean Couturier, to me, like, could he be a first liner in a scenario where he's playing with 2 elite wingers like he was in 17-18 when Voracek had 85 points and Giroux had 102 points? Yeah, I think so. Yeah. But they need to have those wingers with him. And I don't think the Flyers have any standalone first line wingers. I think you have 2 guys in Konechny and Farabee who could be top line wingers if they're like the worst player on a line. Like, if you put Farabee with Matthews and Marner, or let's say you put Konechny with Scheifele and Ehlers or Connor, yeah, it would work. But, like, Farabee, Couturier, Konechny, I don't think that works. And I think the big problem is, and it has been for a long time, we've talked about this, is that the Flyers lack transitional players. And I think a guy like Couturier, that's the weakness of his game, is that he's a heavily average transition guy. When he's isolated in the D zone or he's isolated in the offensive zone, he's a good player, but the Flyers don't have those players that really scare people off the rush. One thing that I think that Owen Tippett has been a breath of fresh air with, obviously you'd like to see a bit more finishing, but he's kind of provided a bit of that, like, dynamic offensive ability off the rush.
Because he's an explosive skater.
And it's an explosive skater, not a small guy by any means.
Nope.
Good shot. So, I mean, and I think that it's even better when you have those players who can drive it up the middle of the ice. Mm-hmm. Like, do you remember, like, the heyday of Malkin when you'd pick up speed up the middle and he would just truck people?
Yep.
And that's not to say that you got to go out and get, like, the current day Evgeny Malkin. Like, you can be smaller and be just as dynamic. But I think that when you see a guy like Austin Matthews dominate, to say nothing of him playing with Mitch Marner, who's never gets talked about enough.
Yeah.
But Matthews, like a big, solid guy who drives it up the middle of the ice. I think that's what the Flyers are missing.
And the reason why that's so important is that you just collapse the D to the crease, and it opens up so much space on the ice when you are able to drive up the middle like that with skill and with power like that. Like, you just suck everybody down low, and it gives you so much more room to operate in the offensive zone. It's what Calgary does too.
Yep.
By getting a guy like Tkachuk to the net, because then Gaudreau's got all this space on the outside to be creative and dynamic, but it doesn't happen without that other player. It just doesn't.
Yeah, and like, look, I'm not one to try and crap over a guy who's had, how many points does Gaudreau have now? 110 points.
I mean, his 5-on-5 numbers are
outrageous.
Staggering. Yeah,
it's like 80 points, the most since in 20 years or something.
Yeah,
and
it's unreal.
And he even has good underlying metrics defensively. Mm-hmm. Like, he's had just an outrageously amazing season. Like, this is nothing taken away from Johnny Gaudreau.
13 points.
That's insane.
He's plus 63. We haven't seen any player over plus 60 since Mario Lemieux in 91-92 and Gretzky before that, I think, in 84-85.
He's had just an outrageously fantastic year. And again, it's not me trying to diminish the season he's had. It's just that I think that people have to understand the context of how great of a season he's had. And Daryl Sutter is just kind of like the master of plugging guys in the right slots to succeed in his system. Like, he's made a guy like Eric Goodbranson like a solid bottom pair defenseman, and people were talking that Goodbranson was washed 5 years ago when he was in Anaheim and Ottawa as early as last year. But like, for you, Jay, like, you signed Johnny Gaudreau, you dump $9.5–10 million into him, and you stick him on the left wing with Couturier and Konechny next year. What are you expecting?
Yeah, I just, the other thing I worry about with Gaudreau too is playoffs. I got to see something in the playoffs.
That's player,
when the game really tightens up and each inch of the ice is contested, can he still be that same player? Now, he's done a lot of his damage, obviously, at 5-on-5. He's got 88 even strength points this year, 11 more than McDavid and Austin Matthews, which is an astounding number. I mean, he's only got 6 power play goals, and he's on the season, he's got 39 goals. It's nuts.
He's been amazing, but obviously we've seen Gaudreau not quite like this. I think his best season before this was 99 points, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. And it's long been the issue in the playoffs. And I believe the last year that he played like this, his 99-point year, was when I think the Flames finished first in the conference that year. Was it under Bill Peters when Brian Elliott was the goalie?
Yep.
And then they got stomped out of the first round by the Colorado Avalanche.
And he had a bad playoff.
He had a very bad playoff. Now, look, a lot has changed since then. Like, Monahan isn't your top line center or even a center on your team anymore. You have Elias Lindholm, who's really like had a coming out party under Sutter. Matthew Tkachuk turning into that dominant superstar on the other wing. You have a defense that's as solid and well-rounded as arguably any in the NHL. A goaltender in Jacob Markstrom, who, like, I think it was Bob McKenzie who brought this up a few weeks ago, that if you go based strictly on numbers like the last 3 years, you can make the case that regular season he's been the most consistent and best goalie in the NHL, maybe aside from Andrei Vasilevsky. It feels like everything's coming together right now for the Calgary Flames, and Gaudreau is a big part of that. But there is that looming black cloud, and if you go up against a team like the Nashville Predators in the first round, like, is he going to be able to infiltrate? Now, I do think the injury to UC Saros kind of makes that matchup uneven a bit. Like, I thought it may have been a contested series, but if they have to roll with David Rittich, which ironically is a former Calgary goaltender, maybe that's going to be an easy round for the Calgary Flames. But again, Gaudreau has to shake off some of that negative aura around him in terms of playoff hockey.
Yeah, he does. No doubt about it. Let's look at the last thing. Let's look at the Western Conference. And you see these matchups that we're looking at for the most part here in the West. And, Colorado is going to be the number 1 seed in the West. They got 118 points. They're going to get wild card 2, which is going to be Nashville. Presumably Nashville. Could be Dallas, I guess, still. But do you see Colorado having any sort of hiccup here?
In the first round? I mean, look, if they get Dallas, I remember they played in round 2 of the 2020 playoff bubble,
Yeah.
and Dallas beat them. And obviously, Dallas is not the same team. Ben and Sergei and Pavelski, or well, not so much Pavelski, but Radulov are 1 year older. You don't have Anton Khudobin in the net. I think they're going to roll in with Holtby, although Ottinger has kind of been battling well.
Yeah.
But
Colorado's dealing with the goalie issues too, though.
that's it. Like Kemper seemed to have kind of gotten his game straightened out since a tough, start to the season with injuries. But Colorado has historically had trouble with those heavier defensive teams. And, they got bounced by Vegas last year, had trouble with the heavy hockey. Obviously, Dallas bounced them a few years ago in the bubble. And if you play Dallas again, they are like some of those old bad habits going to, resurface for the Avalanche. Now, obviously, they've kind of tried to address that. They add a big, tough defenseman like Josh Manson at the trade deadline. You add a guy like Arturi Lehkonen at the trade deadline. But is it going to be enough to overcome those demons? I think that Colorado will win the first round, just because I think Dallas has kind of regressed a bit too much over the last 24 months or so, specifically in their stars. Like if you still had a guy like Sergei playing the way he used to and all that, like I love Joe Pavelski, but can he be your most consistent offensive player? Yeah. Nick Robertson, another guy who's an incredibly underrated player, but are Pavelski and Robertson and Rupe Hintz going to be able to match the McKinnons and the Rantanens and the Landeskog's and the Kadris and the Burakovskis of the world? So I think Colorado will ultimately win, whether it be Nashville or Dallas, especially Nashville because of the goalie situation. But I don't think it may be as easy as people may think.
Can the Caps scare the Florida Panthers in round number 1?
The problem here is that Bobrovsky scares the hell out of me in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. But the problem is, on the other side of that coin, is do you have confidence in the Caps goaltending?
No.
And that's the problem. If the Caps had any type of goalie, like even if they would have gone out and gotten like a Martin Jones as just kind of a safety net, maybe I could have been sold on them, because I do think they're kind of built for playoff hockey. Like they're a team that kind of tiptoed through the regular season, slumped a bit, obviously took advantage of the Islanders having a really bad year and that much separation. But, you have guys like Wilson and Hathaway and all these mutants that they have up front, big, solid guys. TJ Oshie is no slouch either. And I think that they could cause some problems for Florida, who's a very high-end offensive team. But the problem is that while Florida has some questions between the pipes, you can make the argument that the Caps have more issues between the pipes. And that's why I think Florida would ultimately win.
Yeah, they'd ultimately overwhelm them. And we'll crank it up again next week. It'll be the off season, and we'll have a lot to discuss. So thanks for doing this as always, and we'll talk next week, brother.
Sounds good, man. Talk soon.
There he is from the fourthperiod.com. Anthony DiMarco joining us on BetParx Presents Stick to Hockey Live every Thursday at this time. We like to do a little something we call Tone's Takes. All right, here we go. Another brand new edition of Tone's Takes. What's happening, Tone?
What's up, Jason? How you doing?
Oh, man, the greatest time of year. Playoffs are getting ready to start. I know the Flyers aren't in it, but geez, it's going to be so insane, these playoffs.
Yeah, the first round is it's the best hockey of the year. First round, especially now with these division matchups coming up. I mean, that Minnesota-St. Louis series is going to be a war. I can't wait for that series, man. As soon as they locked that in a couple weeks ago, I was like, oh, this is going to be awesome.
Yeah, that's going to be one of those ones where you go, man, whoever survives that, can they get past the next round? Because they're going to be
kind of like how the Flyers-Penguins were.
Yeah.
Kind of like how the Flyers-Penguins were in, was that 2012 in that series,
Yeah. You're just so beat up after it because it's such big boy hockey. Let's get to the business here. NHL year to date. How about 522, 528, and 40 plus 31.61 units? Let's get to play number 1. And let's go to the Ottawa Senators. You like the Sens here, plus 210. Florida just played out the string, nothing to play for. I mean, the President's Trophy's there, but you like Ottawa in this game.
Yeah, I mean, they're a pesky team. They're at home. They played Florida tough this year. They beat them 8-2 in Florida, like earlier in the year, which is crazy. Like I said, they might be resting players. I'll take a shot here on the money line. Probably wouldn't I'm going a unit on it, but probably only recommend a half unit. Take a little flyer on it. So a plus 210, yeah, it's great value. Spencer Knight's going in goal tonight. He's had his struggles this year, so might have Florida lose this game and then maybe pick up the win tomorrow night at the end of the season. So
yeah, the thing is, Ottawa, all this like at the end of this year, I mean, they've won 4 straight, and they're 6-3-1 in their last 10. They're playing pretty good hockey right now, and you want to end the year on a good note. So I love the value in that play.
Yeah,
and to me, that's a human nature play.
Right, exactly. They're up in Ottawa. They're in Montreal tomorrow night. Like they want to end out the season here, so it's definitely a good look. So we have to look at the next couple of days with some of these games.
No doubt.
Especially now with some of these players being rested. Like they never used to rest these players towards the end of the year like they are now. So
I know. I ripped the NBA for years for load management. Now it's entering the NHL. I'm like, geez.
Yeah.
Gonna have to rip the NHL soon. Let's get to play number 2. Buffalo and Boston. You don't like a side here, but you like the over 6?
Yeah, I like the over 6 here. Buffalo's are scoring goals. They scored 3+ in 8 of their last 10. Boston has 9 goals over the last 2 games. Omar is going in net tonight. I think he gave up 3 goals to Buffalo earlier in the year. So I think this can get to a number of 6 at least. So we'll take a shot here. I don't know if I would go 6.5, but I'm good with the 6 here.
Yeah, minus 105 at 6. Third play is a guy that it can be a real big factor when Toronto and Tampa lock horns. It's Steven Stamkos. But you got him over 1.5 here, plus 130. Good value here.
Yeah, he's hit this, and I hope I'm not late to the game here, but he's hit this in 7 straight, 21 points in that span. Columbus, we all know their defensive problems. Zach Werenski's out tonight. They shut him down for the rest of the year. So I'll take a shot here at plus 130 on Stammer to get 2 points.
I'm stunned at the player he still is. He's had such significant and somewhat bizarre injuries, but I think with those injury-riddled years and maybe some down seasons, I don't think we realized or remembered how dynamic of a player he is. I mean, he's got 101 points. This is a guy.
First time getting to 100 points.
Yeah, because he's dealt with injuries, right?
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, we remember the years where he was, scoring 60 goals, but I mean, he's just a great player, and I think we forgot about how potent he could be. And he, the one year they win the cup, he plays basically the shift, couple of shifts, gets that goal.
That was in the bubble, right?
Yeah, exactly. He's full value now for what he's able to do, and he is hot. All right, so the 3 players,
and they are getting hot at the right time. That team.
Yeah, I was worried about them
for like a month. Yeah, me too.
And now all of a sudden, championship pedigree right back on display, and boy, that series is especially awesome.
Yeah, especially with the goalie injuries in the East. Freddie Anderson's banged up, Chari's banged up. I mean,
it's so wide open, man. Like I can't even. I have no idea who's coming out of the East. I can't predict it. I mean, Florida's great, but can they play 2-1 hockey games? Are the playoffs going to be 2-1?
I don't think so.
Yeah, it's weird. So the 3 plays: Ottawa Senators plus 210. You got play number 2, Buffalo and Boston. You like the over here, over 6 at minus 105. And then play number 3 is Stammer over 1.5 points at plus 130. Tone, great stuff as always. Where can people get your info?
At Tone Stakes on Twitter, and then also on dimers.com and Strecker.com.
There you go. Tone, we'll talk next week. When we talk next week, Tone, it's going to be the first round of the playoffs.
Yeah, it'll be about what? Game 2, game 3s? Game Tuesday. They start Monday, so can't wait.
Yeah, man. I love it. Cannot
wait.
Hey, brother, have a great week.
Thanks, you too.
There he is. Tones Takes, another edition here on BetParks presents Stick to Hockey Live. Let me tell you, you got the 3 Tones Takes there? Let me tell you where to put them. Right on the new BetParks app. It's fantastic. It's the greatest mobile casino and sportsbook you're going to find. Take it from me. The new BetParks app, it's everything you want in a mobile casino and sportsbook. And it's right in the palm of your hand. It's your phone. If you're on the move, easy to get your action in. It's, first of all, easy to sign up. Second of all, easy to deposit. Third of all, easy to use, fun to use, and faster to win than ever before. If that's not 5, I think that was 5 reasons to get the new BetParks app. Here's a 6th and the biggest one. Right now, all BetParks users, not just new customers, but new and existing users can use the promo code JASON750. Jason, Jason, 750, and that's going to get you a risk-free bet up to $750. Use it on one of the 3 plays from Tone Stakes. Use it on that Ottawa game, or the over on Stammer at 1.5, or the over on that goal total of Buffalo Boston. It's +6. Jason, $750, going to get a risk-free bet up to $750. Again, for new and existing users, terms and conditions do apply. Get the app. It's fantastic. And it's a great time of year to be jumping in on all the action, whether that's the hoops playoffs, the upcoming hockey playoffs, baseball. You've got golf, you've got tennis, you've got Formula One, all kinds of stuff. So get the new BetParks app today. You're not going to regret it. Again, easy to use, and use the promo code Jason750 and get that risk-free bet up to $750. So download the all-new BetParks app today. You do need to be over 21 and present in Pennsylvania or New Jersey. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, that wraps up another week of BetParks presents Stick to Hockey Live. We'll be back Monday. It'll be the off season, and we'll be heading into the 2022 NHL Stanley Cup playoffs when we convene again on Monday. Don't forget, Monday, we're going to have the great debate between Bill Meltzer and Anthony Sanfilippo on Morgan Frost. That's coming up in Monday's episode. Everybody, have a great weekend. We'll talk to you next week on BetParks presents Stick to Hockey Live.